I'm Tiernan. As you know, or most of you will know, I'm a development officer at NICIE, and we're here for what is the first of our Teachers Committee sessions this year. We're joined from Ciara Hunter, who is from Fort Hill Integrated College, and she's kindly offered to present to us on embracing Muslim learners. It's great to have you all here today. It's a brilliant turnout, and at the end, I know more are due to arrive. So we just appreciate any time that you can give us for this kind of shared learning and this collaboration between schools. And as mentioned in the emails, the more you can spread this with your colleagues, the better, because ultimately Teachers Committee is for everyone across the integrated sector, and any teachers that can really have access to that, the better. But I'm going to pass over to Ciara, and Ciara, whenever you're ready to start, we'll begin. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Like Tiernan said, I'm Ciara Hunter. I've been the integration coordinator in Fort Hill Integrated College for a few years now. And today's really just sharing some of the good practice and things that we have picked up and embedded over the last few years to help fully embrace the Muslim learners within our school. A little bit of background about our cohort. We're based in Lisburn, and 5% of our students are of Muslim faith. That's 13% of our other cohort. Really, this came to light when a student in my form class informed me that he was having to complete 3 of his 5 daily prayers at home in the space of sometimes about half an hour. Because of the timings of the prayers, that there was maybe only half an hour between school ending and sunset, and he had to get those 3 prayers completed. And something about that just didn't seem right to me. Then it progressed that some of the students were asking to use rooms at lunchtime to perform 2 of their prayers so that they weren't having to do that as soon as they came home. And it was happening on an ad hoc basis. And some students were able to find spaces. Some students never asked for spaces. And I just felt like there was more that we could do to help make the environment much more inclusive for them. So our aims were quite straightforward. We wanted to enable all of our students to access the facilities that they needed to practice their faith. We wanted to ensure that consistency. So anyone who was wanting to have the space could have the space. It wasn't who was asking and who wasn't asking, who had a room and who didn't have a room. And to enable our pupils to develop that respect and understanding. So all of our students here know about the quiet room. They know that they can't make an awful lot of noise when they're down there. They know what's happening there, and our Muslim students are happy to talk about it, what they do and how they do it while they're down there. And that has really helped to develop that understanding and that respect for their views and for those differing views. The way I began this was by having a consultation with staff and students. So I asked them about who needed the space, who didn't need the space, who was being asked, who wasn't being asked. And a number of staff had been approached by students individually. And I took the step then to speak to all of our Muslim students about the possible creation of a quiet room. And the majority of responses were yes, and that was across all year groups. I mean, 71% altogether wanted this space. There was only 19%, and that was in some of the lower year groups that was more prevalent. And the maybe responses were an awful lot less frequent and spread out across the years. The biggest maybe we had was in year 13. So it was clear that this was something that was wanted and needed. And it seemed like something that would be fairly straightforward to try and develop for our students. So we identified a few different areas to develop ways to embrace our learners. The 5 daily prayers was what we came trying to support. That was one of the most obvious ones. In the Muslim faith, they must do these 5 prayers every day. It's well, my way of describing it was like a holy day of obligation. If you were a Catholic, where you have to go to mass on that day, these students have to perform these 5 prayers every day. The issue became the sunrise and sunset times, because the 5 prayers are dictated by the timing of sunrise and the timing of sunset, and trying to find a time that worked best that would cover the 2 prayers that normally occur within school. Now, we've managed to find a good way of doing that, and we have 20 minutes. The last 10 minutes of lunch 1 and the first 10 minutes of lunch 2, 90% of the time will fall in between those 2 prayers. And there is precedent set within the faith to allow the students to do those 2 prayers, even though the second one is maybe technically 20 minutes early. So it has really worked for our students to allow them to embrace their faith, have it acknowledged within school, and appreciated within school without impacting their learning, without impacting their day-to-day school life. One of the other areas we had identified was fasting during Ramadan. So during Ramadan, Muslim students will fast, and I apologize if a lot of you are aware of this already, but I thought I would go with assuming that maybe some people aren't aware of some of these things. They'll fast from food, drink, and enjoyable activities during the daylight hours. So it is much more than just not eating. And depending on when Ramadan falls, this could be 13 plus hours for some of our students. So we have developed a few ways to try and address that within school that I'll mention later on. And then finally, body coverings. So we have some female students who wear different head coverings in different styles. We have some students who cover their arms and their legs. And we have some male Muslim students who need to cover from their belly button to the top of their knees, because in their faith, that is considered a private area that should not be viewed. So some of the ways in which we develop these areas: school uniform. We had an amendment put into our school uniform policy. The most common headwear that we saw were hijabs, shayla, and the hijab amira. But as you can see, some of those would leave a few issues health and safety wise. So we had it written in that the material for the religious head coverings had to be natural material, because they are less or not flammable materials, because Bunsen burners in science, that's a big thing. They have to be tucked in within certain subjects. So all of our STEM subjects, HE and PE, wrote a separate health and safety policy with religious head coverings and body coverings written into it. So for example, in technology, any of the loose parts that you especially see in a shayla or the hijab amira are tucked in under the blazer. So there's no chance of it accidentally getting caught in the bandsaw or the sander. And in PE, our students are allowed to wear, I call it the Under Armour style. It's almost like second skin. So they wear a sports top that has long sleeves and leggings in their PE kit. so that they can cover their arms and their legs. And one of the things that we did put in was that all of these things had to be within the school colours. And part of that is to avoid a student from othering themselves without even realising it. So if a student comes in, everything has to be in green, white, navy or black. And we've been running that for a few years now, and that works really, really well. And it means our students are all able to take part in PE and not have to worry about anything. The quiet room was the big thing. Trying to actually find a room in school was something. Now, I'm fortunate SLT were very, very supportive with this, to the point that when we found an old PE changing room that was no longer being used, we were actually on our hands and knees taking out the bolts that were holding the benches in. My principal and my vice principal were both rocking the thing back and forth, trying to loosen it from the floor. Everybody was very hands-on. Everybody got very involved because we knew how important this was. So we were able to find a room, and we very deliberately called it the quiet room. It's not called the prayer room or a multi-faith room. It's called quiet room because the intention is for it to become multi-purposeful. For the purposes of our Muslim students, as I said earlier, they have 20 minutes a day, and very little actually needed to be done to the room once we had the big benches in the middle pulled out. I was able to use a little app on my phone, a little Google app to actually find a Qibla. So it's finding the actual direction towards Mecca. And I had printed and laminated an arrow called a Qibla marker and fastened it to the floor once I had used the app to see what direction they should be pointing in. Because we were able to use an old changing room, it was near a bathroom. So Muslim students will perform wudu before prayer. At home, that will involve fully washing hands and feet, but in a school environment, they can actually just wet their hands and press their wet hands on their feet rather than having to actually strip off socks and shoes and the full works. It's more about finding that cleansed state of mind and place to be in before they pray. So the fact that there was a bathroom nearby was fabulous. So they are usually the only students in that part of the school at that time. So they can go into the bathroom, do their cleansing, and go straight into the quiet room. I've found now this is our third year running this, third or fourth year running this. It is mostly used during daylight savings time. Students are happy to have it, and some students will use it outside of that time, but by far the vast majority use it from October to the end of March, which is a good chunk of the school year. Those are the times they are very keen to not interrupt their school day unless they need to. So as daylight savings time ends, they have more daylight time at home and will perform the prayers at home. But absolutely from October to March, we have tens of students in there every day. And because it's open during both lunches, just different times of both lunches, it is a stream of students in and out. So to try and allow for any issues with that, we were very fortunate that we had a classroom assistant who is Muslim herself and was able to help me put an awful lot of this into place. And she would stay down there because she had her own prayers to perform and was able to take attendance. And we made it very clear to the students from the beginning, I am not their imam. I wouldn't want anybody telling my priest when I do and don't go to mass. It is not attendance for the sake of seeing who is doing their prayers and who isn't. It is purely for child protection. So we know who is down there and who is not down there should anything happen. And the students were all more than happy with that. This year, we're rolling out further use of the room to students of other faiths. So this year, the plan is to use it during May for doing the rosary. I'm hoping each year we will add more and more in. It is very much, it's not something that's very common in a number of schools. So we are trying to sort of take our first steps and roll this out further as best we can. But so far it has been very, very positive. Just to give you a little look of the room. So it was obviously a very hard tiled floor. And that was going to be very, very difficult. So we actually had a friend of the school donate some carpet. And all it did was just to take the harshness and the coldness off the floor. We have the Qibla marker, and the students brought in their own prayer mats and they stay in school in the room. We use the seating then for the students to place their shoes on so that their shoes aren't on the floor. And the female students already know, they know from doing this in their own mosques, and they automatically go to the farthest point away from Mecca to form their line to pray. They don't need anybody calling the adhan. They don't need an imam there. They know what they're doing and they get on with doing it. And the number of students and parents who have been so appreciative of this space, which has taken very little on our part. It was finding a room and kitting it out to be ready, and that's it. There was very little that we had to do on our end. The students have done most of it themselves. The most we did was me harassing people for the carpet. And a parent kindly donated a little bit of money, and I bought the sheer curtains at the back for them. And that has been it. And the room has functioned that way now for at least 3 years, and it has done what it needs to do. And then we already have staff on duty at lunchtime, but staff that are in that area obviously are aware of what it's used for and are extra vigilant, and just remind students if they're being a bit noisy walking past what's going on, which again deepens that understanding and that appreciation from our other students. Last year saw something new happen in our school. We had been supporting Ramadan for a number of years within school. The canteen offers halal food for those who request it all year round. And the last couple of years, the PE department have made a point of avoiding doing cardio activities in the classes after lunchtime. Because for some of our students, they would have ate at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're hitting hour 10 at this point with no food and no drink. And honestly, it's a health and safety issue by that point, trying to get somebody to do cardio activities. So the PE department have adjusted and managed what they're doing with their classes to still allow everyone full access to the curriculum, but by doing these the cardio lessons at a different time, which has been fabulous. Every year, staff are made aware that it's the start of Ramadan, and it's lovely to hear them sort of directing Eid Mubarak to a number of our students and having it said back, and just the joy with some of the students that this is being acknowledged really is heartfelt. Staff are made aware, obviously, that students are avoiding food and drink, but also that they are avoiding enjoyable activities. Now, this works in a scale, as it does with most religions. For some of our students, simply abstaining from food or drink is enough. For some families that are stricter about their faith, even listening to music for enjoyment is considered haram. So It is something that I make staff aware of because a number of us would put on the radio if students are doing an extended piece of writing or an extended piece of work, and we would put the radio on as a treat for everybody. So there's something in the background. It's to make them aware that a student may say no. It's not about not playing the radio during Ramadan, because we've created the environment where a student who does consider it haram can actually address that with the teacher in a respectful way. And it's so the teacher is aware why they're maybe requesting the radio isn't on. And every year we have an assembly that's led by our Muslim students. Now, depending on when those events fall, we've had students do just a Ramadan assembly. Last year we had an assembly that covered Ash Wednesday, Lent, and Ramadan, and we had 3 different students of 3 different faiths deliver that assembly. But it is simply raising that awareness with our students, and they actually get to talk to each other now, and you can hear them talking about it and asking, how hard is it to go without food? How, they're asking those questions and they're learning from each other about it, which is fabulous. And then last year we were the first school in Northern Ireland to hold an iftar. So iftar is the evening meal that Muslims have during Ramadan after the sun sets. And it is a time to spend with family. It's a time of sharing. It's a time of appreciating what you have. And we were very fortunate to be able to offer this in school. It's said after the Maghrib prayer, and Maghrib is said at sunset. It's immediately after sunset. And we had over 70 parents attend of all faiths and none, which was lovely to see. And everybody brought food with them. And after the prayers, everybody sat down and ate and had a chat. And everybody was so appreciative of the opportunity and the acknowledgement. And it was a beautiful event with some beautiful sentiments shared. All we needed for that was a large space. So we used our assembly hall. We were able to contact the Belfast Islamic Centre, and they provided us with covering. Now, it was just like a rollout paper, but that was all they needed. We had bathrooms nearby that were identified for male and female for people to perform wudu. I have a recording of the Adhan. The Adhan is the call to prayer that you will hear near a mosque to let people know that it's time to line up. I had prepared a recording and everything was ready to go. And we actually had one of the parents perform the Adhan live instead. He volunteered, and that was awe-inspiring. We also had another parent who led the prayer. You can reach out to your local mosque and ask for an imam to come out. One of our parents was able to do it. And I said about the floor covering. What we also had was a few dates. Now, our PTA were able to donate the money for that. And I simply went to Tesco's and was able to buy enough dates. We had an idea of what numbers we were looking for, and got enough to do 3 to 5 dates per person and bottles of water, because the Muslims that attended, they break their fast with a couple of dates and a drink of water so that their bodies can focus on the prayer that they're performing. They do Maghrib and then they have their big feast. So we were able to provide that, which was lovely. And a number of parents brought dates with them. we were coming down with dates afterwards. But it was very nice. And even just the small touches like that were appreciated. Um, the way that I ran this was very simple. I sent an email invitation to all parents of all faiths, uh, telling them that they were more than welcome to attend, and had a Google form attached asking if they would like to bring food. I had added in about halal food. I'd been able to mention that there were a few halal butchers in Lisburn, or that they could go for something vegetarian, um, and that they were to avoid adding alcohol to their cooking because that would then make it no longer halal. I kept it fairly straightforward, and most parents were who responded actually felt that it covered everything. Those who weren't Muslims, they find it very easy to understand. We had the prayer in our assembly hall, but we had allocated 2 HE rooms, and the parents that arrived brought the food with them and took it to the HE rooms, where we had a couple of volunteers to keep all of the food warm. And then we also had dining space within those HE rooms so that people could go round, fill up their plates, and move to the next room to be able to eat and sit and chat together. And it was a lovely warm space, and it was a lovely warm event, and we're hoping to run one again this year because it went so well. There were students there who are poor attenders or have struggled in school, and to see their response to the event, to see their response at having their faith acknowledged and celebrated within school still gets me emotional now because they appreciated it so much. And I had to include this picture. This is 3 of our students in their traditional Syrian, Afghan, and Indian dress who absolutely enjoyed the event and perhaps in no other circumstance would be together and would be friends, but were able to celebrate that because we held an event like this. I think that's it.
Ciara, that was amazing. I think I speak for everyone there, and it's just always inspiring to see how much schools are doing, but specifically, like, I mean, you do so much for us already in Teachers Committee and in terms of presented anti-bias a few months ago, but just brilliant in terms of the way that you're intentionally bringing people together and going out of your way to actively ensure that those children are celebrated. And I thought what you said there at the end, specifically about those children who might be poor attenders or struggling in school in other ways, in which it was such a clear way to see themselves represented and celebrated. So thank you very much. I'm just going to ask if you're okay, Ciara, to see if anyone does have any
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely.
Hopefully you can raise your hands and turn your mics off, but if not, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat if anyone does have anything to ask. Susan?
Well, you would know me. I had a question. Hi, Ciara. Well,
Relying on
mine
you.
is quite personal because we're at the bottom of the hill from Ciara. We're in the same campus. And I talked to Tiernan last week about how we facilitate our Muslims. Being younger, we had
Yes.
I had shared an Afghan family arrived, and we'd made provision for getting places for the children. The language was an issue that arrived quite quickly. Um, and there was a panic one day. It's because a child came running out. There's a boy with his feet in the sink, miss. So we suddenly realised we hadn't had to make provision for this. So we did very quickly have to get him a very special basin. We have the room as well. But I'm just thinking, Ciara, from the point of view of our children moving on. We've a boy in P7, and I'm not sure if we could maybe arrange that that family could be invited up this year, because it would be a lovely way of him feeling he's very welcome in the school. I'd shared with Tiernan that we had a Muslim assembly, and we brought the Lisburn Aman in, and this boy, the pride that he had, he put his hand up and he said, "Are you really a Muslim?" And Madar said, "Yes, I am." And he was just so delighted. He was beaming and turned around to look at everybody as if to say, "This is one of my people." And his siblings were in the assembly too. And the first non-uniform day we had after that, he came in his national costume because he just felt we were really endorsing, his culture. But we can talk about that later on, but that would be lovely.
Absolutely.
And it would be a good one maybe for some of the secondary schools to consider for the primaries, the feeder schools, that
Yeah.
opportunity might be good for those Muslim children moving on.
Yes, it allays those fears. That was maybe
Yeah,
something I should have said. Every year, I bring all of our year 8 Muslims together and show them the quiet room and show them where everything is, so that they know that that's there. But actually, having gone through it with my son this year, that P7 transition it can be horrific. So
yeah,
sometimes actually coming up in P7 and seeing
yeah,
that this is here for them
yeah,
actually it would waylay an awful lot of
yeah,
those fears.
yeah. That would be great. We'll talk later about that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Um,
Jess has said she would never have considered the impact on school attendance, and amazing. Jacqueline says, how did you bring up the colours of the hijabs in a sensitive way?
well, what I spoke to, we had a student who came in a bright pink hijab one day, and I was very straightforward with her about it, and I explained, our other students aren't wearing bright pink jumpers. They're not tie-dyeing their school shirt. And I explained to her, I was like, I appreciate this is religious headwear. This is something you have to wear, but we're a learning community and you're part of our community. So in the same way, if anyone had to wear anything else, it would have to fall into the community. And she very much appreciated it. She understood when I worded it that way and explained that our uniform is part of our community. It was no issue to her. She just genuinely hadn't even thought this is bright pink. She hadn't paid any mind to what color she was wearing. So I addressed it as I would any other uniform violation, because the way I see it, their hijabs are part of their uniform, and that's the way we treat it. It's because it's something they have to wear.
Yeah.
It's therefore part of their uniform.
We had a teacher that introduced students to him last year who wore the hijab, and then previous to that, the girls didn't wear it while they were in year 8. But following that, they felt more comfortable to wear it. And they're twins, so one wears one colour and one wears another colour. The other girls that wear it are all wearing black, but one's wearing white and one's wearing pink. So obviously that I hadn't even thought about that customer colours. That's something we're going to have to look at a conversation with year head for next week, David. That yes, we can do it, but it has to be uniform colour.
Yes, and I mean, it is very much policy equals practice. So if you can get that addendum into the school uniform policy as well, it means then you have that backup to say it's in our policies, and that just gives you that little bit of backup with it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Ciara, if I can ask, so you mentioned obviously different students will have different perceptions of what constitutes as haram to them, and some might see the radio in class as being haram, and others might see certain curricular subjects as being. But was it immediate buy-in from staff in terms of being adaptable with that, or was there ever a sense of pushback?
Mostly, yes. I mean, most staff, I mean, to me, the radio's a treat. So it was simply a case, and for most staff, I think they would consider having the radio on for their classes as being a treat. The only issue we had was when a student, their argument was that the study of music was haram. And we then had to sit down, and again, this is where I'm fortunate that we had Alice, because you can Google the life out of things and you can try to ask people, but unless you're actually talking to someone who lives and breathes it, there's always that doubt. And she was able to explain quite clearly to me and to the student that the study of music, which is what happens in school, is not haram. And I think staff being able to see that we weren't just opening the doors and saying let's just wipe everything out and we're just going to do it, that they saw that we were actually pushing back, is probably a more aggressive term than I would like, but we were challenging if there were issues that weren't genuinely part of the faith. They knew we weren't just chancing our arm, and a lot of staff were bought in there. And I think we've always had a reasonable number of Muslim students. Yes, in the last 5-6 years, that has increased more and more. But because we've always had at least one or two, and this is my 18th year here, we've always had a few Muslim students. We were fortunate that most of the buy-in was already there, especially with all the work that we have been doing with regards to anti-bias and our integrated ethos. As you know, it's always been all faiths and none for us. So that work had already been done quite a lot with staff. And in fairness, once the students started doing it and staff started talking to them about it, they started to really see the benefit of it and appreciate it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much again. And if I can just say on behalf of everyone, it's been brilliant. And as always, we value any of these sessions, but particularly when it's a staff member from an integrated school who takes the time to put that together and deliver it. I think people just appreciate it that much more. So thank you, Ciara.
Thank
and
you
just
very much.
Not at all. Just for everyone else's information, as you know, there are different sessions upcoming. So we've got a session with Trukra, we've got a session with Naomi Green, who's done some work with Northwest Migrants Forum and Hidden Histories Northern Ireland. We have a session with Northern Ireland Humanists, and we also have a session at the end of the year with Sandra Patterson on her delivery of geography within an integrated school. Before you go, I'm going to post this link into the chat, but you can open it and then close the chat if you understand, and I'll also send it to you after the fact. But there's a little session evaluation that we'd really appreciate you filling in and taking the time to do it. But again, just thank you very much for everything. Thank you, Ciara, and thank you to everyone for attending. We really appreciate it. So whenever you're all ready to head, just head away. And Ciara said there, yes, just reach out if you have any questions.
Tiernan has my details.
I do, and I'll pass it through when I send through the video. But hopefully you don't get inundated, Ciara, but I know people will be keen to talk to you.
Well, I know even sometimes the practicalities involved, there was a lot of trial and error for us.
Yeah.
So even learning from my mistakes.
Yeah, completely. I'm just going to turn the wee recording off. There we go.